Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about 2 ways to mark your metal. And the first way, we're going to take a copy of your final design. You guys will have explored a variety of ideas in your sketchbooks, and once you have chosen the final one that you're going to transfer to metal, you're going to create a copy of that on tracing paper. Some of your sketchbooks will look like this, to where you have individual pieces that are taped down. It's important that you don't take this off and use it. So in my sketchbook right here, I've decided I'm going to work with this one. I'm not going to take this one off. What I'm going to do instead is create another copy. In case something happens to it, I have one to go back to. So I am going to be very carefully tracing this as exact as possible. If I make the line thicker, if I move in a 1/16 of an inch, that is what my saw blade is filing. So if I have symmetry, it's a little bit harder to work with than asymmetry, because the exactness is really, really important in symmetrical designs. Probably clean this up a little bit before I actually used it if I was doing this for a final piece. But this is my copy of that I'm going to use to glue down to my metal. So I have this intact. I'm going to move that out of the way. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to take the tracing paper and I'm going to cut to the nearest square. Because you guys are purchasing this metal, you only want to purchase as much as you need. You don't want to over purchase. You want to save that money for your next project. So I'm going to use the scissors. I'm going to trim this as close. Now the square and the rectangle don't have to be absolutely perfect, but this is the amount of metal you need to create that piece. Now the function of this is a ring. So when I'm thinking about the color and the gauge of the metal that I'm choosing, the color is a personal preference. In terms of the gauge, I'm going to first start in these boxes of kind of scrap metal to see if there's a piece big enough that will fit this down. As you look through here, there's not. Be careful about moving this metal around because sometimes it can be really sharp and you can cut yourself on those edges. So I'm looking in here, there isn't any. So I'm going to then move on to the bigger piece right here, and I'll end up trimming this down. Only going to take what I need. So I can either glue it down in the corner here, or I can glue it down orientation this way. I'm going to use rubber cement to do that. You're going to go ahead and take a thin coat of rubber cement. I'm going to place a thin coat of rubber cement on the metal itself. Better to kind of go outside of a little bit bigger because that will just rub off if you don't need it. I'm going to let that dry. I'm also going to place some rubber cement onto the back of my design. Now if I have drawn this in pencil, and it can smudge, so that's why I encourage you to draw it in pen. I'm going to go ahead and let that rubber cement dry. If I put these two pieces together right now, it's going to act like a slip and slide, and your design's going to move around on you the whole time, and that's just frustrating. So go ahead and let it dry. You'll notice that, hopefully you can see that, there's kind of a glossy sheen in here. That means that it's still wet. So I can move the air around it. I want to make sure it's got a matte finish to it, so the stuff that's on my paper has pretty much dried. This has it's still a little bit wet right here. Usually about 30 seconds to a minute. One of the most common mistakes is people put this on too quickly, and you start cutting your metal, sawing your metal, and this piece shifts around and then your design changes. So this is going to, when it's dry, act like Velcro. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down on the corner. I'm going to go as close to that corner as I can. It does not matter if the paper overhangs. I just want to make sure that my design does not overhang. There, and again, that extra rubber cement just rubs off. So now I have this. The bench shear is going to allow us to cut this into a piece, and I've already bench sheared this piece right here, so we're going to use this to actually cut. But that's how you glue your metal down on that. The second way to transfer your idea to metal is to actually freehand draw it. So I go back to my original design, and I say, oh, I'm going to freehand draw this on here. I do not encourage this at all because it's too hard to get back to where you were at with your original idea. So this would be a really good way to transfer a design if you had needed a ruler. You had a really geometric design you were working with. That Sharpie will come off. You can either use a little denatured alcohol and a Q-tip, or you can use some emery paper to get that off. So let's say that you have a very geometric design on here. You can just take a Sharpie and a ruler and you can draw that on here and work from there, and those can be your guidelines. Here's an example of a student who very, very talented in her drawing skills. So what she ended up doing is going ahead and creating these pieces and sawing them out. And she decided she was having a hard time with the paper staying on, so she decided to go ahead and freehand draw that on there. You'll also notice that there are some holes drilled in here. You'll also notice that there is an outside shape that's different than a rectangle. We will get to that in the next video, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.